History, especially architectural history, follows an interesting path and often resembles a circle no matter how far we advance. Before industrialization, people lived in harmony with nature. Homes were built using natural materials, and humans quickly became an integral part of the ecosystem. These structures could be reclaimed by nature as quickly as they were constructed, emphasizing the true balance between humans, the environment, and the low footprint we left behind. Naturally, humans would evolve and advance, leading to turning points in human history like the Industrial Revolution. With the Industrial Revolution and the rise of significantly different means of living, humans began to overstep and offset their balance with nature. Like history, this issue came full circle as architects and onlookers began to consider the ramifications of humans' impacts on the environment and how to fix this issue and to leave less of a footprint. MIT professor and architectural historian Timothy Hyde highlights the growing reality of an architectural crisis. In his article, Architecture, Modernity, Crisis, from the start, Hyde characterizes that those involved in architecture are increasingly seeing architecture through the lens of crisis in relation to the environment. True sustainability is a complex issue with a complex definition. One half of the sustainability equation, which is arguably just as important as the other, is that of what the building is made of. The materials used are extremely important and either make the building a truly sustainable building or just make the building sustainable on the outside. Yet many modern solutions focus almost exclusively on energy efficiency. They build buildings with low emissions but ignore the harmful materials that are often toxic, difficult to recycle, or environmentally destructive. True sustainability combines the two, depending on energy outputs and something built to last that can be appreciated for centuries. True sustainability is a building that has been renovated and kept alive. Additionally, the buildings have long gone carbon neutral and is the epitome of reduce, reuse, and recycle. In addition to sustainability, it also preserves centuries of art, history, and culture for future generations to enjoy, learn, and engage with. It is essential to consider the future and how we affect the future in the present, but that is not a good reason to forget the past. We must preserve art and culture while preserving our Earth. Of course, critics of current sustainable practices are raising important concerns. Many architects focus narrowly on efficiency and emissions, creating buildings that technically have a low output but use immense unsustainable resources in the process. One study on hotel construction management points out that while energy consumption gets a lot of attention, material waste is ignored. These buildings generate tons of waste during construction and often rely on plastic-based materials that are anything but sustainable. While these concerns are warranted in theory, in practice they are not. Many real-world examples do show it's possible to build sustainably with low energy output and natural materials without living in a mud hut. An article discussing similar sustainable practices in China discusses the importance of green practices and physical activities in accordance with nature. Similarly, it builds off of China's rich cultural heritage of green practices. This example from China again shows the feasibility of combining sustainability through their 6 main sustainability approaches, all while preserving history and culture. These practices are hardly confined to China either. Methods such as 3D printing from natural materials and the resurgence of more sustainable and substantial materials such as wood are on the rise. These resurgences and innovations allow us to make buildings that integrate perfectly with nature while adhering to the aforementioned standards. Such advances are advanced by Kathleen Relihan's article, which provides multiple examples such as the SFERIK Museum in an ancient Mayan village in Yucatan, and it is an inventive museum that meshes art and the natural jungle environment with history. Another example is Switzerland's high-performance emissions building, which focuses on architecture and sustainable technologies. Another way to sustainably source natural materials is through the simple but well-known phrase, reduce, reuse, and recycle. These materials can be repurposed instead of demolishing old buildings and sending the materials to landfills. The abundance of these materials is supported by studies and reports conducted by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. The EPA highlights the large amount of materials sent to landfills when they could be repurposed for sustainable construction following the reduce, reuse, recycle principle. The 2018 fact sheet shows 600 million tons of construction and demolition waste were generated in the U.S. The demolition represents 90% of total debris generated, while construction represents less than 10%. Quite clearly, an abundance of materials is just waiting to be used. Using these materials reduces the demand for virgin resources, lowers the carbon footprint of construction projects, and ensures that a building becomes carbon neutral faster. It also reduces costs, with the article from China's University of Technology naming a cost-effective operation providing cultural value over time. They also discuss how sustainable architecture should focus on design from a life cycle perspective. Sustainable buildings should focus on the minimization of environmental impact through resource efficiency, waste and emissions reduction, and material selection. Additionally, they should be adaptable throughout service life and end-of-life strategy, ensuring that materials are either reused, repurposed, or disposed of in an environmentally responsible way. While it can be easy to consider architectural history through the simple lens of coexistence with nature, in doing so, you completely overlook the beauty, the history, and the stories architecture can tell. However, modern architects are accounting for that too in a way that combines history with sustainability. For example, in Jingdezheng, China's porcelain capital, a porcelain museum is created using recycled bricks from other kilns while incorporating natural cooling systems, combining these aspects, making it a low energy consumption building, all the while preserving aesthetics and cultural heritage. In conclusion, buildings, whether we realize it or not, dominate our lives as the most common physical factor in our lives next to the very existence of humans themselves. They also represent one of the most common ways we impact the environment. Such frequent usages lead to significant energy requirements to keep buildings running and constrain the environment immensely. Humans will continue to expand and encroach on the environment no matter what we do. It is only natural. This negative expansion is why minimizing our threat to nature is so important. However, sustainability is often approached from the wrong angle. More often than not, sustainability is judged by its energy output and efficiency, completely disregarding the fact that it is built using unsustainable materials and practices that are in some cases even more harmful to the environment. True sustainability requires a broader perspective that focuses not only on energy efficiency, but also on the materials used in construction and the lasting impact the building has. By choosing natural materials and reusing existing ones, further damage to nature can be avoided, creating a more harmonious relationship between man and nature. Humans are also very quick to tear down buildings and rebuild them in the name of sustainability. However, this is unsustainable in and of itself. It requires immense power and energy to tear down these buildings, and these materials are often sent to landfills. Instead, buildings should be preserved for their merits in terms of sustainability and for preserving the rich cultural heritage some of these buildings hold. Buildings that should be demolished can also be repurposed, and the materials can be recycled and reused. Through solutions such as using natural materials that can integrate perfectly with nature and recycling old materials that have already been sourced, we can create these low efficiency buildings while not encroaching on nature even more than we have to. The solution to this critical issue already exists and is doable. It is up to the architects and builders of the world to implement this solution.